Today's show is brought to you in part by the America's Best Racing Fan Choice Awards. You can vote for all kinds of stuff over there, but I'm not going to lie. The one we're really concerned about you voting for, Best Horse Racing Podcast. JK and I looking to defend the title. There's some worthy competition, but we think we are going to be able to hopefully get it done for the second year in a row. We shall see. We need your help to do it, folks. That's the reality. Help us out. And we made a pretty link for you to make this super easy. InTheMoneyPodcast.com/vote. Go to InTheMoneyPodcast.com/vote and vote for the In the Money Players Podcast or whatever your favorite podcast is today. InTheMoneyPodcast.com/vote. Hello and welcome to the In the Money Players Podcast. This is our show for Friday, November 19th. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatal, back with you. As you can see, as the hat says there behind me, in the Brooklyn Bunker once again, and very happy to be joined by a couple of guests who I always love to have on. We're going to be talking about Aqueduct. We're going to be talking about Woodbine, and we're going to check in about the JRA races Saturday night as well. Couple of programming notes. We are going to be doing a special show about the Gulfstream Park mandatory Pick 6 carryover for Saturday, November 20th. You can find that on our Plus service. If you subscribe to our Plus service, you also get little notes with all the horses that we pick on the shows, a bunch of extra podcasts, written content, etc. To learn more about that, InTheMoneyPodcast.com/plus. Had a whole lot of new people come and join us on the Plus side at this Breeders' Cup, and hopefully it's going to end up being very sticky, and we can keep bringing you all kinds of great extra content that way. But there's always going to be a ton of free stuff as well that's worth paying attention to, and I think that's what we're going to give you right here with our first guest, who I'll bring in. Very, very popular, has had a ton of success with me talking about, typically he comes on and he talks about New York racing. He is noted contest player and contributor to InTheMoneyPodcast.com, Matt Vagvolgyi. Matt, how are things?
Doing great, Pete. How are you? You staying warm in the Brooklyn Bunker? It's getting a little cold here in Saratoga.
It's been weird, man. Yesterday was like 65 degrees, but then the weather came in a little late, and the cold air came in behind it. And this morning I was absolutely freezing down here, so I busted out the old grandpa sweater, which I was very disappointed to see, despite the fact that I had packed it away carefully for the winter. The damn moths got it, man. I guess I needed to throw those mothballs in there.
I go with my dog's index. I call it the Smokey Index. If he's curled up as tight as possible on my couch in my office, it has to be freezing. So that's always my first sign in the morning of how cold or how warm it is.
That's pretty funny. So we'll start off with a little therapy. I know you, like me, we're in a pretty down place about the whole modern game situation and you know what it meant for you, specifically your pocketbook and your chances in this year's Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. I know you had a strategy predicated around that horse. How are you feeling now with a little bit of a distance from the event?
Well, like anything else, Pete, time heals all, right? But this one's, I got to say, it's different. I just think it really exposed a level of incompetence that I didn't think was possible. And it's not only what happened on the track, it's what really is what happened after. Explanations and things that came out afterwards of just, kind of flip-flopping back and forth. I can't help to separate it from what I do in my business. When I see something that's relatively small, but it gives me alarm that what does this mean in the broader picture, right? I mean, I've ended contracts based on a specific event because I can't rely on you. If you're that incompetent here, how can I rely on you, going forward? So, listen, I want to keep the negativity to a minimum, and it's at times it's hard, it really is. And, should I throw it out into the abyss that is, misery's clubhouse? That's Twitter. Probably not. But, it's the way it is. And sometimes you get so frustrated. And I know a lot of folks that are close to me that play this game know it comes from a position of love, is that when you do enjoy something so much and you see something that I feel can have such a major down effect on the game, it gets really frustrating. It really does. And I just think, it was frustrating on that end. The money part, I mean, listen, is that the end of the world? It isn't, but it would have put me in a very different position in the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. I'll call it about 22,000, 23,000 probably going into Saturday. and I probably would have bet at least, I know I would have bet at least half on Golden Pal. At least I probably would have bet more given the price I got. And now we're talking different, now we're talking a very different situation. And as the day went on, I kind of reversed course on Knicks Go. I just felt like I've got to start. I kind of pushed away from my figures a little bit, especially with Jackie's Warrior. My figures were telling me that this horse is a bit more of a dogfight than what I thought. And Knicks Go just jumped off the page. I didn't feel like anybody can go with that horse early, so I kind of changed course there, which I found that to be interesting. That folks were kind of, I don't say going after, but questioning JK on switching his thought process. I mean, to me, that's the definition of a great player, right? Information comes to you, you see things differently, and as the day progresses, you can be flexible with that. This isn't chess. This isn't exact moves to get you to the promised land. Things change. You got to be flexible and look at things differently. I did that in a similar way. I made a big bet with my own bankroll on Knicks Go, but yeah, changed things from Friday to Saturday. But it's behind us. But again, I think it's something that sticks with me a little bit more than say a DQ or something like that.
Yeah. I hear you. And I thought you'd appreciate the chance to talk about it because I know you didn't want to get into the muck on Twitter. And by the way, that if one were to ever create a horse racing Twitter T-shirt, I think the phrase "Misery's Clubhouse" might have to appear on it.
Oh, I think it's true, Pete. I think it's true. I try to stay away from it as much as possible, but sometimes you can't help it. So
there's good and bad. I mean, because of Twitter, we've been able to get our messaging out to so many people who wouldn't have been able to necessarily find us otherwise, and meet a lot of great people and find people to put on these shows. I mean, there is good with it. But I also like the story you told me about your ultimate. You were thinking about taking a more serious break, and you had a conversation with, I believe it was a mentor in your day job, your proper job field. And I thought that was a message worth sharing as well.
Yeah, I think, because I think a lot of the response has been, well, just stop betting, right? That's always been the response. And I can't fault that, right? That is the way to, if you want to affect the game the best way you can, right? You want to put it in that context, is to walk away. And I just thought, yeah, we got onto this topic, and I was, still in my moaning and complaining mood. And, he said, listen, do you enjoy it? I said, yeah, I love it. I absolutely, this is my best platform of gambling where I really think I have an edge. I said, okay, have you been successful? I'm like, yeah, it's been hundreds of thousands of dollars in profit, to put it bluntly. It's like, well, if you enjoy it and you're making money, why would you let the incompetence of a few take all of that away from you? Right. And I just it hit me a little bit differently. And I think that would be my advice as well. You run into a situation like that, you got to think about it almost selfishly a little bit. Are you going to punish yourself even more to prove a point? I don't think that's the proper way to look at it. And I just felt that put it into great context. And, again, I feel that way, right? I do love it. I do want to play in it. I do feel I have an edge in this game, and I shouldn't let a situation like that just completely dismiss that opportunity moving forward.
Let's talk about this pick six at Aqueduct on Saturday. I know this is a meet that you look forward to. Nick Tamaro talks about the great opportunities you find all the time. I've felt similarly, and I think this is it's an interesting sequence. It seems like you might have some stronger opinions than I do, which I'm of course excited to hear. But it kicks off with our fifth race. We've got 2-year-old maidens going 1 mile and a 16th on the turf. Some rain came through last night, but it looks. And there was a little in the forecast for this morning, but it looks mostly like it's going to be clear. I'd be surprised if we don't end up. I don't want to jinx it here too badly, but I think we're going to end up on the turf. How do you want to get this candle lit when it comes to this pick six?
I agree with you. I think we're going to be on the turf. I don't see too much of threatening weather coming in, so I'm going to play it as if we're there. I think you got to start with the 7, Fort Washington, in this sequence here. Thought it was a nice effort first out. Shug does tremendous job second time going long on the turf. Nice figure that came back. Any type of improvement, in my opinion, this horse is going to be very, very tough to beat. I feel maybe getting a little bit close. I like to see this horse a little bit closer, but I think I'm going to start with the 7. Fort Washington. I'm also going to take a peek at the firster for Chad. Chad and I team up here. On the 11 forwardly. Again, I'm going to let the board kind of, decide what I do there. If I still include as an A or maybe move to a B, the board is usually pretty honest with Chad Furster. So I did want to take a look there. And then I thought a couple others to consider. The 4 Parketry, I thought that was a decent effort. Slow start, broke slow at the gate, had to use a little bit to get back into that race going a mile at Belmont. I think cleaner break, I feel should be more up close to that pace. And I think another horse up close to that pace is the 3, Dr. Brown's Miracle. So A's for me, the 7 and the 11, and I'm going to back up with the 4 and 3. The 4 and 3 are more pace plays, being up front, might be able to steal on the front end.
We see it exactly the same way. I put Fort Washington on top. I love the way this one came home in the first run. And as you point out, for McGahee, horse almost has to improve. Parketry also has that second-time starter angle for a trainer in Barkley Tag, whose runners almost always improve. You made the case very well. I'll also just note that I like the fact that the horse has worked 4 times since the first run, which showed a little bit of promise. I was inclined to use the 7-4 and the 11 as A's, with the 11 being one that I am obviously very interested in the signal that we're going to get from how this horse is bet and how he looks in the paddock as well. But between the fact that we're dealing with Chad Brown and Twirling Candy, who does so well with debuting types, at least a backup for the 11 for me, which will move us along to race number 6, allowance optional claimer, 3 and up, going 6 furlongs on the dirt. I was super straightforward here. I thought it looked like a 2-horse run between the 2. Cost basis just seems very obvious based on the body of work and the tactical speed. I think to get the best trip and maybe be able to control things and make things a little tough on the other one who makes sense, who's of course the 7, Spun and Won. This one took a big step forward last time. And when these late season 3-year-olds take these steps forward, I expect them to keep on improving. Worked 3 times since the last run. And if it is faster than I expect up front and doesn't end up suiting cost basis, I think that attacking outside position for Spun and Won could work out. I was super straightforward, 2 and 7, both on the A line. How do you see it?
Similar. And I think your ideas, I think a cost basis is the kind of horse I want to try to beat, right? But I just feel like you look at the body of work, this is probably going to be the softest field in like 2.5 years this horse has faced. I just think finds a group that can get to a pretty soft lead. I know Mr. Phil might give a little pressure, but I don't think that horse has the class to really push this horse along. So I just feel like cost basis has found a field that it's going to be very difficult to overcome that soft early pace. Tough to run down. I think the class will show in the stretch. I'm a lone A with cost basis. I'm going to back up with a lone B, which is your 7, Spun and Won. Like you said, just improving. I like to see a horse, especially that last race, with a really nice figure improvement. Can be tactical from the outside. I like the fact that Saez is out there, can really make that decision of what to do. And you're right. And that's the reason being is if it does get hotter up front, if the connections of Mr. Phil say, listen, we can't win this race if we don't go. Right. And hooks up cost basis a little bit. I think you want to have the 7 there. So I'm lone A with the 2. I'm going to back up with the 7, Spun and Won. But I would say 80-90% of my tickets are going to go through cost basis in this race.
It's an interesting situation for a pure game theory point of view, because I think so many people are going to do what we're doing. If you can make any case for one of these others to at least try to get a backup line going to something creative, because I think beyond these top 2, you're going to really get an outsized payout. I just couldn't come up with anybody that I felt good about, like giving out on a podcast. I might continue to grind with that idea though, but it sounds like you're just like me. I mean, even if it's hard to see others from this far out for me, even if I squint.
Yeah, it's you have to see big improvements, right? You've got to hope for big improvements. I'm just not big on hope strategies, right? And on anything, whether it's horse racing or life in general. So I think you're right, though. I call it a sponge bet, where if you find another horse that you have a thought or a way you could throw in, it's going to soak up all the equity in the pick 6, right? So that's a separation that I like to look for. But again, on my figures and just looking at my pace and also time forms pace, I just feel very slow on the front end. I don't think Mr. Phil can keep up. It's going to be tough to run this horse down in the lane. So again, I'm going to lean here in the pick 6 on this horse. Short price, but I think I can create some value elsewhere in the sequence.
We'll see if any listeners or viewers have any clever ideas. Feel free to reach out, drop a comment on YouTube if you're watching on there, or let us know. But yeah, for us, we will survive or not based on the performance of these runners in race number 6. Let's talk about race number 7, maiden special weights, 2-year-olds going 7 furlongs on the dirt. I'm glad you're going first in this one.
This is a tough one, right? I think this is where you should use a few in here. I got a few that are prices. Not one that's relatively short on the morning line. Sky and Sand for Asmussen. Just like we talked before, I love a horse first time starter that can get out of the gate and show some speed. Faded a little bit, but that speed and fade angle I think can certainly improve. Got a figure that I think improvement will make this horse very tough on the front end. I also think the 8, Dad's Good Runner, another situation, first time starter that can improve. So I think you're going to see the 8 and 10 up front. I think you'll get a decent price, 10-1 on the morning line on Dad's Good Runner. I think you're going to get a decent price there as well. So those are two that I like. I also feel too, you can't really dismiss the firster from Pletcher. I mean, it seems obvious, but the one, the part of the entry, the one Never Change. Again, I like Saez on there. First time starter stuck on the rail going 7, might be a little tough, but at the end of the day, I certainly want to have that horse involved as well. So my A's are 10, 8, and 1 here. And I just thought, horses that I want to include coming off the pace, if it does get a bit hotter, is the 3 Matt Doyle and the 2 Iconic Adventure. Those are the 2 I want coming off the pace. Virtually the same late pace figure that I have, but those 2 horses separate deeply across this group. So A's for me, I'm going to go 10, 8, 1. I'm going to back up with the 2 and the 3 as B's.
It's interesting because we have the same top pick in Sky and Sand for similar reasons, but then I had two different ideas. But I'm going to have some combination spread to all the runners you mentioned and the ones I'm about to talk about. I mean, Sky and Sand, you made the case already. Figure and form case should get a very good trip. Piccadilly was one I wanted to mention, though. Caught some cash as a McGahee firster, and like we talked about in the other race, supposed to come on for that run. And then Life is Great was another I wanted to mention. Is another one of these horses who's improved as the season's gone along, and I didn't think was that far behind the best of these and would be a good price. So I was going to mess around with the 10, 9, and 11, but I want more coverage than that, and I think you've got a couple of good ideas on how we might get it. Let's move on to race number 8 on this Saturday Aqueduct card. We've got 3 and up allowance types going 6 furlongs on the Aqueduct grass. And I lost my notes here. I got to figure out who I had on top. Oh, I had a horse from the watch list in here that we wanted to go with. Number 2, Kawaii a River. This horse had a really bad trip last time. Steadying out, ending up wide against the flow. I thought had every opportunity to redeem himself with any kind of trip back in this spot. Number 2, Kawaii a River. Bust and Shout, I thought there was a chance to be a pace angle if ready off the layoff, and the recent workouts I thought looked pretty strong. And then Scuttle Buzz is a horse who I've always been a fan of. Didn't break the last time, so I was inclined to forgive the run. Now, sometimes that not breaking can be a sign of declining form, but Scuttlebuzz on the previous turf form fits really well in this spot, and I wanted to keep on side. I had a 2, 9, and 7. Matt, where were you?
We're similar. I've got the 2, 9, 8 as my A's, and I backed up with the 6. Again, for all the reasons you said on the 2, Kawaii River, I just think this is an improving horse. I think it's a must use. Certainly will take money as well. Another one you mentioned there, Bust and Shout, I think has found a new home on the turf, and a 5-year-old gelding I think has done extremely well on the grass. And one thing that's interesting too, not for this race, when you're 5 years old, you are who you are, so pedigree kind of goes out the window. But take a look at Bustin' Stones on the turf. I just doing some pedigree research over the last year was surprising to see how good those numbers have been for this horse. So with a positive ROI over the last 5 years, 18% winners, 48% in the money. So, I mean, just some really interesting sire stats on a horse that I don't think jumps off the page as a turf sire, but I like Bust and Shout as well. I just felt could get to the lead fairly easily in this race. I think can dictate, his own terms. So I like the 2 and the 9 as well. The other one I wanted to throw in there was the 8 Ring of Fire. Again, more of a pace play because, again, I think a similar situation. You've got a horse that's going to go off a gazillion to one, which is the 5, is probably going to go, right? They could hook up early on the front end. And a horse I want coming off the pace is Ring of Fire. Is going to have to step up and run a bit better here, but has shown the last 2 races has caught a quick pace and certainly has appreciated with that. So at huge price, well, 2 back, huge price, and then at 9-2 the last time. I think this horse is going to be a bit of a price. I want this horse on my A line to come off the pace in case it gets hot up front. And then the other one that I would add in there was the 6, Call Me Harry. Excuse me. I just, again, could lay close, could get first run, has shown to close into some slow paces, so even if it is pretty slow up front. So I went 9-2-8 on the A line, lone B with the 6. I did look at the 7 Scuttle Buzz. I just feel like, I don't know. I go with your opinion on form starting to fall a bit. I think this horse is going to take some money, and I think you might scratch your head as to, what the future is. I don't know if it could be that severe, but I just feel like I've seen that before in those running lines, and my figures stay the same. So passed on that one, but I can see your angle there. But so again, 9-2-8 on the A line, 6 on the B line for me.
We've got graded stakes action in Aqueduct's 9th race. The Red Smith 3 and up, going 1 mile and 3/8 on the turf. Who's your idea of the winner, Matt?
Well, I think 2 horses for me. Again, they're not the most creative, but I just think one of them being the 7 Channel Cat on the front end. I don't see anybody else going with this horse early. Again, I could be one of those you just completely lull them to sleep and take them, take them wire. So I like that as a pace play, but also there's certainly talent and class with this horse. So, and has proven to go to the lead at this distance and get the job done, gate to wire. The 4 Serve the King, obvious reasons. Chad, Irad getting together, going long on the turf, really doesn't need rocket science to explain that. But again, I think has the talent to sit off and run a horse like Channel Cat down in the lane. So I thought those 2 were really big standouts. They're going to be standouts on the tote board as well. A fuzzy one that I'm going to throw in as a B, I just think is interesting and really has run some really good races. Going to have to run just a huge race here, and that's the 8 Sanctuary City that can come from off of it. Again, I love horses that can close in slow paces. If somebody tries to go with Channel Cat, maybe it gets a little bit quicker. At 20-1 in the morning line, I think that horse could blow up the tote and be live late if it does melt down. So I went with the 4 and 7. I'm going to lean pretty heavily on the 4 and the 7 here, but I do want to throw a bomb in there, which is the 8 Sanctuary City.
I like your case on Sanctuary City. I mean, pedigree-wise, it's a little inconclusive, but Temple City on the top, maybe this longer distance will work. And just an angle we've been talking about on these shows for 5 years, closing into those blue time form fractions. And I guess the real question is about the pace. Is Channel Cat just going to be able to clear? In my original reckoning of the race, I said yes and put Channel Cat on top. And then the more I looking at what Tide of the Sea has become, and noticing the jockey booking with Saez keeping them out, I think there's a world in which they really send. And that could make things tricky on Channel Cat and could open it up for your Sanctuary City idea or a couple of closers that I'll mention. So I am going to have Channel Cat as an A, but I had as my 3rd A. I went with an old friend here, a horse who I've never done anything but be wrong about, and that's number 6, Corelli. But I really like the way Corelli finished up in the Knickerbocker, and I think this horse is going to be a legitimately good price this time. If this becomes everybody's wise guy horse, 6-1 or something, I'll be off. But in the bigger picks, this horse has back form. The races are competitive on figures, and I think the world might be sick of Corelli. And if we can get that pace scenario and we can get firm-ish ground, I think Corelli could be heard from in this spot. The other one I wanted to mention, who I could see maybe getting a little ignored just relative to his accomplishments, is the 3 Soldier Rising. I mean, the form case is right there on the page for you. Just a couple lengths to the eventual Breeders' Cup Turf winner in Yabir 2 races back. And then last time, I just thought that was an absolute no-shot trip, way back and wide against the slow pace. And I didn't like him that day at all, despite his good form, because I thought that distance would be too short. So stretching back out, I definitely need the 6, the 3s, and the 7s. The 4 that you mentioned, the Chad runner, obvious. And if I can afford as a backup, I'll keep involved. But I just think there's others more interesting at prices. And I think I'm going to find a way off your very strong case for Sanctuary City to work that one in there, because that's a horse that could legitimately be all of that 20-1. And I think you make a pretty good case. So what do you think? Is there any chance Tie to the Sea can hang with Channel Cat and set this one up for the closers?
Yeah, I think that's part of my pace, or at least my pace scenario leading into the 8 Sanctuary City, right? That's kind of my idea. And you're right. Saya's aboard. You go 2 back at Laurel. They sent this horse hard, fended off a tough pace scenario, again, against much lesser, but it was still a stakes race. And I felt that pace alone, when a horse can shrug off that kind of pace, got strong and kept going. So I think that could be the idea. And you're absolutely right. If you let Channel Cat go, it's going to be tough sledding late. And that's kind of this is a tough race, right? This is a tough race. I only narrowed it down to 3 horses, because I can go, if I go beyond those 3, like the horses you mentioned as well, I can go a lot of different directions. And that's when, you got to take a loan out to play the pick 6. So yeah, I just try to look for specifics that I think I can lean on. And I think you're right. The 4 listen, I think Serve the King is going to take a ton of money. I think this horse is actually going to be a very short price. It's going to inflate a lot of other horses. So I think as a betting race, just within the race, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. But I just felt when I got beyond the horses that I liked, it's just I can start adding and adding and adding. But I like your idea. Taking a shot against a horse is going to take a ton of money. If you're right, you're going to be moving on with a very few tickets hanging around with you. So you could be in line for a nice score. So I like your approach. I felt this was a tough race. I tried to narrow it down.
Let's talk about the nightcap, race number 10, 2-year-old New York bred maiden special weights going 6 furlongs on the dirt. Big favorite in here. Curious to hear if you're with or against, or just generally speaking, ask you, how are we going to get paid?
I'm going to go with just the A line here. I'm going to use 2 horses. I'm going to be pretty boring. Catching Cupid looks tough. That's a nice effort first out. I thought was hustled pretty hard out of the gate and held on pretty nicely going 6. Horse wheels back less than a month. I like that, right? The horse ran well. There's no issues there. It's right back to business. They feel they've got to win in this horse. And I really feel that's why the horse shows up here. I don't know. I think it can sit off that first fray of pace and can sit a nice trip, even with that inside post, and can be very tough late. I think any improvement beyond that, I think a lot of these horses really need to step up. I think that's part of the problem. I would love to try to bet against this horse, especially stuck down on the inside sprinting. It's just you have to see such big improvement in this race. We talked a race prior that was similar case. This one's even worse for me, right? I see so many horses that really need to step up. The only other horse that I will play again, I've been beat. What am I going? Yeah, 2 times in a row now in this horse. But Hot Rod Rumble, I think is a horse to consider. I think this is a field that this horse can compete with. So I think this 2-year-old colt will be on the front end, will be forwardly placed, and I think can get it done moving quick from the 8 hole. So those are the 2 I'm going to use. So I'm going to try to really press hard on those 2. But I think Catching Cupid is going to be very, very difficult in a very short price in the finale.
I'm with you on Catching Cupid. Showed so much on debut. Good time, the ability to pass horses. Feels like a runner who should be ready to win the maiden off that. I had a different alternative I was going to throw in as a B, and that's number 4, Boss Hip. Interesting firster. Street Boss, excellent mark with debuting types, and the dam has produced 3 winners from 3 to race. I have no workout information or anything like that, but just based on pedigree and at an appealing 12-1 on the morning line, I wanted some 4s on my tickets as well.
Yeah, I think, listen, any insight on these firsters I think would be helpful, right? This is a field where the horses that have run need to just improve, outsized, right? My first inkling is to go towards firsters here, but again, it's such a strong angle. I see a performance like Catching Cupid. That's a horse automatically. It's almost like I don't care. I call it an anchor horse, where I drop anchor with this horse and try to build around, regardless of what the price is, because I really feel that an improvement, which I feel this horse will improve, got to be really, really tough to run down. So it's that tug and pull. Yeah, I want to try to find a firster at a price, but I just feel the 1 is sitting on a big race here.
I like it. We're learning about anchor horses, sponge horses. We got.
You get all my terminology. They don't make any sense to anybody else except for buddies of mine. But it's it's all about it's the emojis, right? When we're texting back and forth, I get a text. I text back the anchor, and it's like, all right, we'll build around this. So all my my idiotic analogies or idiotic terms that I use for.
I like it, man. I like that stuff. It's colorful and fun. It's very good for horse racing podcasts and very good for your bank account. The way you've been going. Any contests this weekend? You got it. Where will most of your action be focused, or is this pick six going to be your contest?
I'm going to play. I think the whole card here at Aqueduct is great. So I would highly, if you haven't taken a look at it, take a look. Pete, you mentioned it in the beginning. My opinion, some of the best racing all year. It really is. So I think this card is great. The pick six, I'm playing this for sure. And I'll probably jump in the Naira contest. I think those are great contests. Got till 5 o'clock today. Technically, I've done it after they've accepted it. But I'm not advising that. But if you want to get in on that, it's a relatively low dollar amount to really take a shot at playing in these contests. If you felt left out in the Breeders' Cup betting challenge and something you wanted to get involved in playing, I think these are great contests to learn.
$500, right? And I think they're basically every Saturday. Naira.com or Naira Bets. You can check that out and get involved and see your name on the leaderboard competing against the likes of Matt Vagvolgyi. Well, good stuff, my friend. Really appreciate your time today and look forward to having you on again soon. I'll holler at. We'll text some emojis back and forth. Maybe we'll do something together in this pick six.
Sounds good, Pete. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much to our latest partners, Adelphi Racing Club. Adelphi is a racing club of like-minded people who enjoy horse racing and the camaraderie of being part of something bigger than themselves, a true community. And there's great communication as part of Adelphi. We're going to actually be part of it, doing some special shows for members. You're also going to have access to key members of the team, other partners, trainers, bloodstock advisors. Adelphi partners are going to receive a bunch of multimedia content. Again, we're psyched to be part of that. And this class of yearling prospects coming up, very, very exciting. Salivo, we love that name. Street Sense Filly, bred to be fast early, going to be heading to Ray Handel in the spring. And there's a still unnamed Taprit colt, looks like going to be a two-turn horse heading to Christophe Clement. That's just two of the runners that are going to be part of the team. We want you to join the club. You can learn more at adelphiracing.com. You can reach out to Matt at adelphiracing.com. And you should follow on social media as well. On Insta, Adelphi_racing. And on Twitter, it's at Adelphi Club. Learn more today at adelphiracing.com. Up next on the show, very happy to welcome back after a very difficult pick six sequence in New York. We tried unsuccessfully, as everyone tried unsuccessfully, to hit last Saturday. Now we're moving our tack north of the border up to Woodbine. Jill Gentili, welcome back to the show.
How are you today, Pete?
I'm doing well. Looking forward to, it's one of these low-key good weekends of racing, I would call it, between the Gulfstream Force Out and, right, some of the competitive racing up north and an interesting pick six at Aqueduct. It should be fun. You were saying off air that you obviously you look at everything, but you have no aversion whatsoever to looking at more of the bread and butter, meat and potatoes type racing as well.
I don't. And I have to say my favorite bet is the primetime pick 4 at Remington Park. For those of you who have not played it, the pool is always pretty decent. There is always a decent payout. I mean, I've never seen payouts like this for a pick 4. I think the computer guys haven't gotten to it yet. Maybe I should keep my mouth shut. But it's always fun to play. You have your secret weapons, the jockeys who always show up, the trainers who always show up. And it's just one of my favorite things to do on a random Wednesday night.
we got to reach out to them. We got to get them. Either we'll get them to do some sponsorship, or we'll do some Remington shows on the plus side. It sounds like you'll be up for that.
I think you should. I think there's definitely some value there for sure.
Excellent. Let's talk about these Woodbine races. We kick off with race number 8. Which goes at 425 on Saturday. 3 and up starter allowance, going 6.5 on the synthetic. How did you want to get this one started?
Well, first, let me start off about a little story about, do you remember the game Let's Go to the Races from the 80s? VHS tape. You even had a little teller hat that came with the game. I mean, it's really random, but all the horses used to run against each other on this game.
Yep.
All the time, different winner every time. I think one of the horses' name was Glue Factory, which is probably not so.
That's in bad taste. That's politically incorrect. That for sure.
But that's what reminded me. It just of this race where these horses have just. They just keep running against. I mean, just the pick four in general, they all just keep running against each other. Different winner every time. Yep. You really don't know who's going to step up on this day. But, as I said in the beginning, I love it. I love trying to find that value here.
Late season meets it is different, when you get what I've heard Mike Maloney refer to it as like tired form. And it can be a little tricky, but there are still angles you can come up with in these races, and just trying to find like those subtle signs of who's getting ready to improve now. Whose turn is it going to be today? How do you see that with this 8th race?
Well, my top pick here is the 2-horse Keep On Truckin'. I started singing a little Grateful Dead when I was looking.
Or Hot Tuna. You can go either way with that. You can do Hot Tuna or the Grateful Dead.
Second start off a 2-year layoff, but ran well in his last start. I think ran well enough to beat these here. I think he should improve off of that start. He could be on the lead. He'll play Come and Get Me. I don't see a lot of speed, and I think he's faster than these. So that will be my top pick here, the number 2. I also looked at number 3, Last American Exit, coming out of that same race. Likes to run in the money, but doesn't necessarily like to win. So, it's a wild card. You may get a little bit of a price on him. Who knows? The added distance should help him. His last win was at 6.5. So, maybe the 7 furlongs here. Oh, this is 6.5. Sorry.
Still.
I mean, it should help. I'm going to use another horse here off a 2-year layoff, the 11 Corsi. Showed speed and stopped in his first race back. He has a couple of nice works since that start. And Josie Carroll has some huge numbers bringing horses back, second off a layoff. I think it was 37%. And, I'm going to use him as my third. My bomb here is the number 1, Super Classy. Hasn't run badly against the likes of these, and maybe could be there at a price in the end.
Lots of ideas that make absolute sense to me. We have a bunch of the same runners, though I did put a different one on top. The 8 Candy Overload I thought was a little bit interesting on an angle I was talking about earlier in the show with some of the Aqueduct runners, just the improving late season 3-year-old. And this one ran pretty well, I thought, in the common race against most of these, considering that he was farthest back and widest. I think it might need a little bit of pace help up front, but I thought at the price Candy Overload was worth including. I totally agreed with you about Keep On Truckin'. Looks to me to be the best possible speed. And this is the other one. It's kind of funny to have 2 horses in here who are second back off the layoff off these 2-year breaks. But Keep On Truckin's worked well since, and definitely is on the A line for me. I thought that the interesting angle for me on Last American Exit, the 3 who you mentioned, was just if that common race turns out to be just not a very good race, and that will sometimes be the case when they all finish in a heap like that. I thought you could really make a case for this horse, despite being a bit of a nibbler, close enough at the condition. The 10-1 on the morning line just looked too big for me. And one other I was going to mention, just as a potential backup, if you're getting involved in longer picks here, Priceless Will makes plenty of sense on form and figures. I just thought was unexciting at the prices, and maybe one I'd back up with, but not one I'm terribly excited about betting in race number 8. Race number 9, Starter Allowance Company once again, 3 and up, going 7 furlongs on the synthetic. And I thought that the number 4, Danny's Victory, just catches a good situation given the form that he's in and the closing kick that he's shown. The last race I thought could be a little bit better than the figure suggests, and this horse fits well even if you just take that figure at face value. So nothing too creative for me, going with the morning line favorite on top with Danny's Victory. Rocket Plan, the 6 I wanted to mention, arriving here in good form, I thought would be suited to the turn back just when looking at pace figures. in theory, this is a big step up in class, but I thought it was interesting on the time form race ratings. This race is projected to be only 1 point different than the last run. That gave me a little bit of confidence to say, hey, maybe Rocket Plan can hang. And then just on pace figures, I thought I could maybe tell you a little story about Mia's Extortionist having an outside shot to wire this field at what could be a very big number. We'll see how the card is playing earlier in the day. If it's, and Woodbine has not been playing to speed the days I've been watching, but especially if that's happening, Mia's Extortionist one to maybe include at a very big price. I thought 4, 6, and 5. How do you see it?
We have a couple of similar picks here, and I have these dogs that they don't do anything all day except when I seem to be on some. Now I have this Kong in my hand.
Is it peanut butter filled though?
It's not, and they have to fight every time I'm on some sort of camera on the computer. It's
like they know, but we love animal interruptions.
It's kind of insane. My top pick here is the 8-year-old, the 2 Brass Compass. First off, the claim numbers are huge for Harold Le Danseur. And
very well said.
Ran against some nice horses in 2020. I mean, Ride a Comet was one of them. I think Sir Winston was another horse that he ran against in 2020. So there's some nice back class there. I mean, obviously going a little downhill in his later age, but his last race was pretty good. He was able to get up even after running very wide down the lane, and he'll be my top pick in here. I also am with you on the 5. Mia's Extortionist seems to be the only speed in here based on his last 2. They decided to start gunning him towards the lead. I'm hoping that Tasaki Fukumoto lets him roll here. If so, he may be tough to catch because everybody seems like a closer in this race. The 4, Danny's Victory, ran a nice one at this level the last time. Looking, he's back to this level, seems to be his sweet spot. Only a horse that was making up any ground in his last race and nearly missed there. And then I have to also use the 3, Dots Vision. Although I'm a little skeptical and I'm not really familiar with horses coming from Fort Erie. Maybe I have to look into that and become a little more familiar. But his last one, he puts him right there with these. So my top A-line would be the 2-5 in here, and the 4-3 would be in the B.
All right, that makes sense. I mean, I would say, especially at this level, the Fort Erie shippers can win. It's you got to always deal with the surface switch and some other other factors like that. But and we should look at it in terms of numbers. But anecdotally, I think you'd probably be all right with that. And Dots Vision should get a very nice trip, I would think, sitting in behind the speed. That's one I'm going to take another look at for possible inclusion in whatever we end up doing in this Woodbine. Often I'll play these as doubles as opposed to doing the whole pick 4, but depending on how it all shakes out, that's a number that's going to be on some tickets. Let's talk about race number 10. We've got nickel claimers, fillies and mares going 7 furlongs on the synthetic. Jill, who's your idea of the winner?
Well, I really hate to play favorites in these cheap claiming races. I think this horse, my top pick, will be the favorite in here. The 8, if 6 was 9. Beaten favorite out last time, shortens up today. She's proven to be competitive at this distance way back in 2020. Again, a lot of these horses, have to look at their back class. So she looks like she'll be tough here and is my top pick. The 3, D Soul, run okay at this level in the last 2. I really like her last race. She kept trying to get to those leaders. Never really got there, but she was well in front of the rest of the field while running 3rd. I think getting back to 7 furlongs is what she needs. And then I'll use 2 more. The 7 Kentucky Fans race on September 21st was really good enough for me to include her in here. She closed well. If she gets some pace today, she should look for her to be coming down the lane. And the 5, Bear the Storm, would be my final pick. I think that, there'll be a toss-up who the favorite will be in this race, the 8 or the 5. She broke her maiden on turf, ran well on the synthetic October 9th. and came back and ran poorly on the 30th. So I don't really love her, but I will use her on my ticket if I do have the money to use her. This horse will, again, probably be about 7-2. Again, don't love her, but she is one that you could use.
I agree with you about the 8 if 6 was 9 being the most likely winner. I think we'll get a great setup. I love the cutback and just looks poised to break through on figures and form. And, the Jimi Hendrix hunch play just puts it over the top and makes it an absolute no-brainer. I also put the 1 Cherubic on the A line, has form that ties in closely with the top pick and is going to be I think it's going to be a much bigger price. I could see them really going a little bit nuts for if 6 was 9 and creating overlays in other places. And Cherubic is one where I think that could be the case. She's got a little bit of finish, and again, just sort of as a value alternative to the top pick will be an A. And then the possible pace play for me in this spot was the 11 Pissarro. Might not be good enough, but I think will be enough of a price that I want to try to cover at least as a backup in this spot. So I saw it. I saw this one 8 and 1 on the A line, 11 on the B line. I wrote you down, Jill, with the 8 and 3 on the A line and the 7 and 5 on the B line. Does that sound about right?
Correct.
All right, good stuff. Let's move on to the pay leg in the sequence. Fillies and Mares, nickel, maiden claimers going 7 on the synthetic. How are we going to get paid?
So, again, maiden, $5,000 maiden, 7 furlongs. You could make a case for any of these horses, but I am going to take a flyer here, and I think I could possibly single in this race.
I like the boldness of that.
I like the drop from the maiden 14 for the 10, hoping for a ring, even though she's coming back in only 7 days. She's dropping ever so slightly, a race she broke very slowly, rushed up, still able to finish, beaten only 2 lengths. I thought it was a very nice race. She could come back in this one a little more fit. I don't think it's a problem running these horses back 7 days. So I really, really like this horse in this spot. If I was going to use another horse here, I'd use the 5 Lime Squash. I like horses that don't really know how to lose in these cheap maiden races. Lime Squash has always only run once. Same thing, restless in the gate, bad break, rushed up, and just kind of got tired coming down the lane. Maybe should be better in the second start. So I'm going with the 10-5 in the last here at Woodbine.
I went with 2 other numbers, though. I am going to end up sneaking, hoping for a ring on a backup line based on making that little bit of a middle move. And it just, a winning connections back in 7 days. I take all your points there for sure. And I certainly understand the idea of Lime Squash just as an unexposed runner, 1 start and didn't really have a fair shake with the break. But I went with the other ring horse, the 3 Hollywood Ring, cutting back, facing slightly easier than the last day, and nearly won at this level before, and then back at that distance. So I like that as well. And I also thought that, just generally speaking, I know there are, what you were saying makes perfect sense. The horses at this level, they can tend to take on a proven loser look. And maybe you could say that about Hollywood Ring with the 6 starts, but a bunch of those races had fast paces. And I think that she might get a very nice stalk and pounce type setup in this spot. I'll give her one more chance. And then the 11 Melrose Star, I wanted to do something with, pretty much devoid of speed. And often these races hold together at this level. They don't like to pass horses, but relative to this field, I thought her closing ability stood out, and I wanted to have her on some tickets. So 3 and 11 for me on the A line. I'm going to nick your selection of the 10 as a backup pick in this spot. And I'll ask you, Jill, the same question we asked Matt to start the show. Where do you figure most of your horse playing action is going to go this weekend? What are you looking forward to seeing?
Definitely looking forward to see how Solid Tune runs, shortening to a mile over at Aqueduct. I love this little horse. She always has her ears pinned and tries really hard. So, I hope she runs well, and we'll see if, she can win at this level, and also maybe she'll get claimed and go to someone else's barn over there at Aqueduct and see how she does in that race. I think Aqueduct has a really good card. I was listening to the end of Matt's broadcast earlier. I'm really interested to see those New York bred stakes, 2-year-old stakes races and see how those horses run, especially the fillies. Bruce Levine, who has Solid Tune, has a really nice Cupid in the filly race later in the day. So I'm interested to see how she runs. And I think that will be a very tough race with Classy Edition in there as well.
Solid Tune goes in the 4th race at Aqueduct, and it's competitive. It's not an easy one, but I had Solid Tune very much in the mix in there because she's got that nice, sort of 2 nice angles for me. One, that was a reasonable pace for the level last time, and she stuck around. And I just love it when they get on turf for the first time and their figure improves so much. A lot of people tend to expect regression, and I've found the opposite. Once they find their home on the grass, they'll run better on it the second time. So we'll wish Godspeed to Solid Tune in there. Who else did I just for the sake of talking it through? Who else did I like in that race? We've got a Dream Streak is interesting for our friends at Cut Air Racing. I think that's who I put in top in my Twin Spires and at the races.com picks. But I had trouble separating those two at the top of the market. Hopefully, it sure looks like we're going to stay on turf, and it'll be an interesting race, and it's an interesting card as well. Well, good stuff, Jill. We appreciate your time on the show today, and we look forward to having you back soon. Maybe it'll be Remington, maybe it'll be Naira. We love the fact that you're like our Swiss Army knife. We can a lot of tools in that golf bag.
Awesome, Pete. I mean, I love it, and I'm going a little broke because I always play all of our tickets.
Of course, you have to.
Time I'm on, but I mean, last weekend, as you mentioned at the top of the show, if we would have hit that, I mean, we probably wouldn't have to do this anymore.
That one was impossible. You did super duper. The previous Aqueduct day, I'm sure you made money. That last week was just very tough. I caught one exacta in the mix there that saved my bacon a little bit and kept it from being a disaster. But it ain't easy. That much is for sure.
That is for sure. But we love it and keep doing it, and it makes us happy. That's all that matters, right?
That's the way that I look at it, and especially this time of year, it's fun. For us real hardcores, it's fun that it keeps going. Let other people take breaks after the Breeders' Cup. We're grinding Aqueduct, Woodbine, and Gulfstream this weekend.
Exactly, and we have the big horse selling today over at Keeneland. Stolen Base sells probably around 2, so hopefully that's another win-win. Fingers crossed on that one. Let me know what happens there. We'll be following that news. Certainly shown plenty of promise. We'll see what happens at the sale. Jill, thank you so much. We'll be talking soon. Thank you. Take care, Pete. Next up on the show to talk about the JR races this Saturday night and over the course of the next couple of weeks, we have a returning guest we always love to have on the In the Money airwaves, Candice Hare. Candice, what's going on?
Not too much. I'm actually on vacation this week. Thanksgiving week, so making some time to hang out with you and talk some racing.
We love that. That works out just perfectly. Are you still buzzing off what I know must have been, at least in spots, a profitable Breeders' Cup for you? I know you were a big Loves Only You fan.
Definitely. I mean, loved her for the race for a really long time. So that's one of the ones that you're always excited about when you feel like you knew for a while that the horse would get the job done. But, it was an up and down Breeders' Cup. I think that's always the case for me, though, because you always have those 1 or 2 horses who I'm like, well, I never would have had that horse in a million years. But that's what's part of the fun of, the year-end championships like that.
No doubt about it. Now, be honest. Where did you end up landing with Marsh Lorraine? Were you able to keep that one on side at all?
No way. I mean, not anything disrespectful to her. I just think it was one of those things where, when we talk about racing, we say extreme pace scenarios brings anybody into it, right? And I think that's what ended up happening there. So it's great for her, great for connections. That's why you bring horses to the big days, because anything can happen.
Now, what do you think this portends, this Japanese success at the Breeders' Cup, for future years? Do you think we're going to see more and more runners? I mean, as much success as they've had in the breeding industry internationally and taking away all these terrific horses from the sales, is this just the beginning, or is this more of an aberration?
I think the biggest thing you might see is maybe better horses coming. I mean, for me, that was always the key to Love's Only You, is that she was a different quality she has accomplished compared to any other horse Japan had ever brought to the Breeders' Cup. So I'd imagine them having success. That usually behooves owners to bring better horses, because it doesn't seem as big of a risk as it is when you see good horses go over and lose, right?
Yeah, that's a great point, and I'm looking forward to it. The increasing internationalization of the event is only going to be a good thing, and just will continue to promote that Olympics-like atmosphere, with not just the USA against Europe, but bringing this powerful breeding nation of the Japanese into the mix. Let's talk about the domestic Japanese races, the JRA races Saturday night. What can we look forward to on this card?
Well, the big race, of course, on Saturday is the Group 1 Mile Championship. So as the title suggests, we are going a mile. It's over at Hanshin. It's definitely a more testing mile than we're accustomed to seeing in America. A little bit of undulation there in that course. And defending champion Gran Allegria is back. If you watch Japanese racing, of course, you know her quite well. Multiple Group 1 winner, and I've just been a real star over the last couple of years, and always feel like it's a treat when we see mares like her at 5 years old still going out there and racing and winning to the extent that she does.
From a betting point of view, where is your eye drawn in this race? Who are some of the potential interesting contenders from this far out, knowing that, a lot more information will be forthcoming, and we'll have Klaus and the team doing some write-ups over on inthemoneypodcast.com, and you can get your own PPs over there as well if you check back on inthemoneypodcast.com as we get closer to the race. But what are your thoughts from this far out?
The real storyline of this race is that, one, you have Gran Allegria back, and she really looks ripe for this race. If you remember, we saw her last time out, over in the Tenno Show Autumn, and that's over a further distance than this 10 furlongs, and she ran really well. She finished third, but it really kind of, I think, stamped into people's minds that she truly is a miler. I also saw some images of her on Twitter, kind of side by side, how she looked in a confirmation photo before the Tenno Show Autumn and how she looks this week, which is something that they do in Japan all the time before the big races. And it's so great to see those pictures side by side.
Love that.
And she looks so fit. I'll tell you, you can see a noticeable difference in her appearance before that first up race compared to now. So this always has been the big one for them. This is likely going to be the final race of her career. And the thing that's interesting that I've always found in Japan is that, at least in the time that I've followed it, so the past 5 or 6 years, I, for the most part, have seen that when the big name horses are having their final race, and if they've been in good form, they almost always win. They take that really, really seriously, that final race. So much so that some of my friends and I would always say, that's the angle, their final race, this is it, they're going to win. So it is something to always keep in mind. I think as Americans, sometimes we're used to some of these horses maybe sticking around for a race or two, maybe longer than they should have, and then kind of going out with defeat. But that's a rarity among the big names in Japan. So you have to keep that in mind with Gran Allegria. I think the other angle is that she's going against a really, really interesting group here of young horses. I mean, some of the names who might be familiar to you, Grenadier Guards, who of course is the son of Wavell Avenue. That's a horse who was a Group 1 winner as a 2-year-old, and he's been really consistent in mile races recently against a little bit easier competition. But you have to remember, he was third in the Group 1 NHK Mile Cup. That was back in May, so he's good enough at this level. The horse who won that race, that NHK Mile Cup, is Schnell Meister. He's in this race as well. He comes into here off of a victory in his prep race that took place over at Tokyo Racecourse. He's always been a favorite of mine. He's a son of Syrianhold, who might be one of my favorite German horses of all time, who her career got cut short, but she was just sensational when she was 2 and 3 years old. So he has the pedigree. He's been racing well. And then you can't forget Salios. I mean, it's kind of wild. This is a horse who at one point was being touted as one of the best horses in the world when him and Contrail had their back and forth at 3. And yet now he's coming into here as, maybe a forgotten horse. He's had 3 poor runs leading into this race. But if you watch his works, he looked well recently.
There's more exciting stuff coming up over the course of the next couple of weeks. Next weekend, and we'll do a segment on this on the show, we do have the Japan Cup. Contrail 7-4 favorite as of now, anti-post in the betting. I also noticed some of the Aidan O'Brien team showing up in the betting, both Broome and Japan listed at 16-1. How much are you looking forward to this year's Japan Cup, and do you have any thoughts on that from this far out?
Yeah, I mean, we're always looking forward to this race. This is one of the races that I think year in and year out, you always know at the start of the year it's going to be a great race, right? And so you have that, aspect always to this one. But this is a race that is looking sensational. I mean, you mentioned Contrail. Obviously, he will be in there. He will likely be your favorite. You mentioned those Aidan O'Brien horses, right? Broome and Japan, 2 horses who people were expecting to see in this race because they do have partial Japanese ownership. So that's always been a bit of an interesting thing, as you're seeing more Japanese owners buying into some of these European horses. You're seeing them come to races like this. But I mean, there are others in there that are very interesting. Horses like World Premier, who we've seen do well, Wagnerian, Aristoteles. I mean, Kaseki, feels like we've seen him in this race. I don't know how many years in a row, but he's expected to be back again. So it's going to be interesting, I think, from a pace dynamic, especially. Luckily for Contrail, he's always been pretty versatile when it comes to pace dynamics, because he might need that on his side in this race.
Definitely something to be looking forward to for those willing to stay up late next weekend. How's the supporting card around the Japan Cup in a typical year?
It's usually quite good. I mean, at this time of the year, you're not only paying attention to, the big races, but you're also paying attention to a lot of the newcomer races and the 2-year-old maiden races, because, of course, their year-end championships for next month as well. And again, maybe a little bit dissimilarly to America, typically the horses who you see who are the best 2-year-olds in Japan, they tend to go on and be the best horses. I mean, really, their horses seem to be more often than not good from the get-go. So don't take it like we do the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, where we're like, well, that horse is good at 2. We'll see if he wins the Derby. Out there, it's usually a different.
Good stuff, Candice. Really appreciate you coming on the show. Oh, before I let you get out of here, my daughter will be mad at me if I don't ask you for a Sodashi update. The horse, she said, Daddy, is that a unicorn? When she watched the tape on Twitter of one of the big wins. What's the latest on her? When are we going to see her in action?
Well, we'll see her in a couple weeks, so your daughter will be happy. We'll see her right off the bat in December in the Champions Cup, switching over to the dirt, but something that she's bred for. Her mom, Buchiko, ran on the dirt all the time, so certainly the breeding is there for her, and I believe that race is a win and you're in, or they have an automatic qualifying to the Saudi Cup, so maybe we'll see Sodashi showing off her unicorn self to the world soon.
Great stuff, Candice. Thank you so much for your time today. We will see you again very soon.
Thank you for having me.
That's going to do it for this edition of the show. We'd like to thank today's guests, Candice Hare, Jill Gentili, and Matt Vagvolgyi. Really fun getting to catch up with them. And things continue apace here on the In the Money Media Network. Mentioned we're going to have a special show for the Gulfstream Park Force Out tomorrow as part of In the Money Plus. If you want to access that, go to inthemoneypodcast.com/plus, and you can see what that is all about. Who else should we thank? Let's thank our latest partner. You heard the ad earlier in the show, Adelphi Racing. Great to be in business with them. We're helping out America's Best Racing, of course. This is not a traditional sponsorship deal. This is enlightened self-interest. We need your votes, people. If you can go to inthemoneypodcast.com/vote and cast your vote for best horse racing podcast. We are really looking to defend our title so that next year, instead of that replica I had made back there on the shelf, I can have the actual one. JK can put up the 300 for the replica. How does that sound? Founding partners, Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation, all the work they do at the Second Chances program and helping these horses find lifetime homes. We want to support them. When it comes to your end of year giving, we'll have Kim Weir coming on soon to talk about that. Or just make a donation, trfinc.org/players. You can also make a donation and get our In the Money whiskey. If you order now, and you better go soon on this, we can get it to you in time for the holidays for the whiskey nut in your life. These are one-of-a-kind bottles, and I'm very, very proud of what we've put together, especially with this new 4-year-old rye with the 4 months in apple brandy barrel. 10 Strike Racing. We always root for the purple and black around here. I have my 10 Strike themed hat on today, you could say, with the purple and black. Marshall, Graham, Clay Sanders, they do such a great job and have such a great team with Liz Crow and Brad Cox and the rest of their trainers, hoping to get a chance to get down to Oak Lawn and hang out with them soon. Most of all, though, I want to thank all of you, the listeners, the viewers, for making these shows so much fun to do. Join us, iTunes, subscribe there, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Rate and review as you can. And you can also check us out on YouTube. If you want to see the world famous Brooklyn Bunker, that's what you're going to have to do. And you can rate, review, and subscribe there as well. That's going to do it. This show has been a production of In the Money Media. Our producer extraordinaire is producer Craig Gorbanoff of the Odds Honest Truth podcast. Our business manager is Drew Coatney. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kitchen. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale. May you win all your photos